welcome to all of you who are viewing and listening to this IAKS Nordic expert talk and webinar on artificial turf. As many of you know, it's a complex field of many different and interesting things to discuss, both the specific systems and the products, but also just the latest new probable restrictions from the EU. So there's a lot of things happening right now, but we will have two experts today who will talk about both their experiences with non-infill fourth generation turfs systems. And we will begin with our first presenter. He is Bjørn from Norway at the the University of Science and Technology, who will take us through the latest research on the topic, and also their own experiences with testing fields of non-infill turf systems. So, and I have to let you know that that the video is being recorded. We have to make you aware of that, and you can ask questions in the chat, and I will at the end pick out some of the questions, and we will have a short discussions from those. And you can write your, if you want to, your name and organization after the question, so we know who is asking it. But welcome once again, and Bjørn, you can take over from here.
Thank you, Martin. I will try to share my screen. And I hope now you have my presentation available. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation from IAKS Nordic to do a presentation of the project we are running here in Trondheim. KHD 2021 is a project on artificial turf. It's funded by three counties in Norway, Viken, Vestland and Trøndelag, along with the Ministry of Culture and the Norwegian Football Association. The objective of the project was to look into what's coming. We started identifying this project 3 years ago, and the question came up after the reports and statements from Scandinavia and Europe that we might face a pollution problem related to artificial turf, and we tried to set up a project and set the following questions. How can we reduce the microplast pollution with at least 80%? And maybe reducing the amount of plastics in the system could be a measure to achieve that goal. How could we reduce the heavy metal pollution from the system, which has been a big concern? Maybe removing the harmful substances is a better measure than trying to protect the system from the ambience. How can we enable a reusable fraction of at least 90%? And typically we could start with talking about sands and later infills and fibers. Our approach was that we have to bring artificial turf into the discussions of circular economy. We cannot just buy and throw away equipment to the extent we have been doing so far. We want to see if it's possible to improve the lifetime of the products. Today, the typical lifetime is said to be something between 8 and 12 years. I think that's fairly short. Following that, we want to look into solutions to reduce the life cycle costs. And of course, if the lifetime of the product is more than before, the life cycle cost will be reduced accordingly, if maintenance costs are not overruling the investment costs. And most important, maybe, we have to make sure that artificial turf systems has appropriate usability for all users group. And I say all. The project is organized in 3 packages. The first one is in sport. At our center, we always start with asking who is the user when we start working on a project with a sports facility. In this case, it's obvious that it's football, but we should not forget that there are another ball sports also calling for use of artificial turf, and we have to keep that in mind as well. Technically, it goes about what we call the leg-shoe-turf interaction. That means we have to have a turf and a shoe which fits to the leg of the user. We can change the shoe, we can change the turf, but the leg is there. And we also include a study on performance testing, and we want to do this every year because we sense, and Words on Street told us that some of the performance factors declared during commissioning of the system might fail after 2, 4, 5, 6 years, and we want to identify those factors and see how can we avoid that. Regarding the system, which is all about the physical part you see, we want to look into design, construction, and materials. The last 6 months, we have been in particular working with procurement and contract strategies because we see that tenders are fairly weak, proposals from the suppliers are not always perfect either, and we need to have procedures and documents and guidelines for making procurement safer and the number of disputes and conflicts after sale less than we have seen so far. The last and even more important work package is on the environment, and it simply goes on the impact and the user exposure. Both is important. The impact on the environment around us, but also how the users are exposed to the materials we are using in such a system. The short story of our artificial turf, it's started in the 60s with a polyamide fiber, and important is to keep in mind that the fiber is the one product which is going through this history as one line. Everything else has been changed. There is always a fiber. The polyamide started with a non-infill system on a backing. The next generation, which was a little bit more friendly to the users, shift from polyamide to polypropylene, plastic or fibers. And later it was introduced sand as a stabilizing infill just to keep the turf in place. It was a big change in the early 90s where polyethylene replaced the polypropylene, and at the same time the synthetic infills were introduced from the rubber industry. At that time it also was a growing diversity in the market with respect to length of fibers, the use or not use of shock pads, and over time also a variety of different synthetic infills. Some years ago we realized that there are new developments on the fibers where polyethylene was improved, redesigned, still kept as a raw material, but designed in different ways, and preferably in the way that you can avoid the synthetic infill, which was the environmentally most concerning factor of the system. What we see now is a further development, but one of them is the red line, and as it was mentioned in the introduction, there is a talk in EU these days from the environmental agency of EU, the ECHA, maybe synthetic infills should be banned for use on artificial turf because they are not given a good enough proof that we are able to protect the environment from pollution from the artificial infills. It's not subtle, but the proposal is there. The 4G system seems to develop in two directions. One direction is that the fiber structures are developed more, and we are now able to see systems where there is no infill at all. That means the materials, the design, and the structure of the fiber takes all the responsibility for the performance. On the other side, we see 4G systems with kind of a topping where an organic material is laid on top to improve the performance of the system that is above the sand layer. These organic products can be olive pits, it could be a mix of cork and coconut, or it could be cork. What is important in this picture is that we should not forget the impact of the shock It seems that the shock bed, it came by the 2G systems. It was developed during the 3G systems, but it also left the market during the 3G systems because there were developed systems with the fiber length and a quantity of infill which did not call for the use of shock bed at all. I think we have to go back and redesign the shock bed, and that goes into my next picture, where we compile the history to today's market, and we structure the artificial product, turf product, as 4 main ingredients: the shock bed, the sand, the infill, and the fiber. And available in the market today, we have everything from, at the left, a long fiber system with SBR and sand and no shock bed, and to the very right, a dense fiber structure with a shock bed and no infills at all. In between that, we have a variety of fiber lengths, amount of infills. We have a variety of synthetic infills like the SBR, the TPE, the EPDM, and now recently also a coated sand product, which without any doubt is a microplastic product, but it tried to combine the sand and the performance infills in one piece. That means a sand which is coated with polyethylene. And we also have the plain sand systems with the shock bed. And the numbers put in here is the thickness of the shock beds, and it should be taken not as the law, but it's an indication that I think we are going in direction of thicker shock beds, or hopefully we will see from the industry more advanced shock beds, which can give the same performance, but maybe not with those quantities. What we are doing in our projects is to learn during piloting, and we have, together with owners, which means sports clubs and municipalities, planning to build 6 pilot fields. We have at the moment 2 full size with sand and oil pits on a 12 millimeter pad. We have 1 with sand and oil pits on a 30 mm pad. We have one non-infill. It's a small pitch, it's a 7 size. And I suppose there will be another one full size later this year. And then we have 1 which is coming because the procurement process has been delayed for different reasons. In addition to that, just to keep knowledge of the market, we have some reference fields, and the 2 of them are basic 3G with sand and SBR and a 12 mm pad. 1 is brand new, and it is extremely interesting. It's a sand and oil pit pitch with 30 mm pad, but the interesting part is that it's all based on the recycled materials from the old pitch. So we have actually in our project now what I think is the first artificial turf field, a full-size 11 pitch in Scandinavia, where the old materials from the renovated pitch was brought to the suppliers and refined and came back as an input to the new system. We will also have a reference field with the sand and core coconut husk as to compare and to understand how these materials work in Norwegian climate and over time. One of the reasons why we want to look into how to reduce the amount of materials in the system is that trend analysis on waste from the artificial turf market in Norway started in year 2000, and as an estimate goes up to year 2030, that means 10 years ahead. This graph shows 3 lines. The blue one is the fiber, the gray one is the infill, and the upper one is the sand. And it's clear that with our boom of construction 10 to 15 years ago, we laid the base for a huge renovation market and an equal quantity of waste in that market if we should proceed as we are today, with no reuse or no attempt to try to refine the system in a way that we can reduce the total amount of inputs. So what have we seen after 1 year and a little bit more than that? One experience in the sports package is that we see that the standard test procedures as issued from FIFA, I should mention that the pitches we are working with, they are for for a lower level football and kids and youngsters. That means we are using the Nordic norm as a reference. If some of you are outside Scandinavia, Nordic norm is very close to FIFA quality regarding this performance numbers we are looking into. So we're using that, and what we see is that if you see a diagram with a number of tests collected from a few pitches, it's not easy to say which pitch has which materials, because the numbers points in all sorts of directions. So those methods has to be improved. And it should be mentioned that FIFA is now in process on launching a project just to do that. They are trying to together with the market, to develop new equipment and new methods to test our turf systems in general, but of course mainly artificial turf, with the objective to be closer to the feelings and understandings and experience from the users. What we also see is that we have to be more careful with the design of the systems according to the usage and user groups. And it sounds obvious, but it doesn't look so in the market, that schools and playgrounds might have different needs than match arenas. We know that in a school pitch, most of the users are running around with flat soles, while on match arenas we are using football shoes, which is a big difference in terms of performance of the materials, but also the impact on the leg for the users. Regarding the system package, we see that there is a need of designing the system as we described, with the pad, with the turf, and with the infill. All in all, we cannot just procure from the market one piece here and one piece there. There is a need of developing maintenance equipment more fit for the system, not just any machine for any turf. And even more than that, it's important to develop procedures that enable us to maintain by demand, not by the hour, and maybe also more advanced systems to plan and to declare maintenance, and I will show that later. We are concerned about the fiber qualities, and I will show you some pictures later why. We are working on a model for life cycle cost, and I think that's interesting. It's an early stage. We have not too many numbers in our database yet, but we have a trend also there, which is quite interesting, and it goes fairly against some of the conventions in the market on what is the cost of owning an artificial turf system. Regarding the environmental package, it's clear to us that it's always cheaper to remove the polluting materials than making precautions to avoid pollution. And it should be done on product level, not on the turf, or not on the field level. It's cheaper to do it by the product than to try to seal the whole pitch inside some kind of a protective measure. Life cycle cost, this is, as I said, a model in an early stage. It describes, the numbers are in euro, and it describes the cost for owning a pitch for 10 years, starting with the cost of removing the old pitch. I'm talking now on the renovation market. In some cases, you have to do some environmental protection measures, indicated here with a very small budget compared with what numbers we have seen in the market, but we decided to do it like that, including the cost of the investment and the cost of the maintenance. And the graph is sorted in a way that you have the artificial infills to the left, in the mid you have the organics, then you have sand, and to the very right you have a non-infill system. And what's interesting to see is that artificial infill rises the operational cost to an extent that in a 10 years time it tends to be fairly expensive compared with more advanced new systems using organic infills or sand or even non-infill systems. And that's what I said seems to go a little bit against the conventions, because very often when we talk about tenders for artificial turf system, it's the cost price for procurement, which is the way to evaluate the tenders. It's very rare that you see tenders where they ask for the life cycle cost of the system. And it's also, I know that quite well, not easy to dig out the true maintenance cost for the different systems. But our numbers are used on objective sources and owners, not only on suppliers, just to make that clear. I talked about fiber, and this is pictures from us showing what the headache of fiber is about. And I think that is one of the elephants in the room in this industry. We are not taking enough precautions against the weak fibers, which either are designed of a low quality polymer, or maybe it's not designed, manufactured with a UV resistant additive. And it might sound stupid, but if you buy an artificial turf system which is not designed for outdoor use, maybe you have been doing a mistake. But on the other hand, we also see low quality tufting, we see low quality backing, and the picture to the left show a high quality fiber, but it just slipped away from the backing and make the system useless. We don't want to see pictures like that. I will introduce you to Drive, which is a system we are now implementing. It's a system, it's a software for operation and maintenance of sports facilities. And the first stage is artificial turf. And we find that interesting because that's where we are now. It is a package where you can fill in your numbers and plan your maintenance according to the demands as scheduled by the supplier. And then you can declare what actually did you do. It will be extended with a demand-oriented profile in the sense that you plan your maintenance depending on the usage of the pitch, not on how many hours since last time. It's implemented now on our test pitches, and I hope 1 year from now we can be back and say this is our experience with the Drive, and it was helpful, or after modifications it was helpful for the users and the owners. During this year we will implement this on our pilot fields and a few others, and we try to keep this under our supervision so we know how it works. We will also have access to different pitches and see how the users are using the system and share their experience. It's so far available in Norway and in Norwegian, but I know that the company developing this software are busy with translations, so it can be available for other languages as well. So what's coming? Regarding the sports, we have to work more on the design for the users, and we're not sure what that means because in many cases the pitches are used of different user groups, and they should try to fit to most of them. We are doing this long-term performance testing. In the system package we will, as I mentioned, introduce the Drive. We will work with subterranean heating systems, which is another question mark. What should it cost to keep a pitch winter open without using salt or other measures? We are working strongly on recycling with different parties, and one of the reference projects, as I said, is designed and constructed with recycled materials. And we are working with contract guidance and some work to create documents or guidelines for disposal for the civil works, artificial turf installation, and so on. Regarding environment, we have just conducted a study on the impact of salt. There are used much more salt on turfs in Norway than the road industry are working on using on the highways, and we question that. We have just started to build up a model on carbon dioxide footprint, and we are setting up a project on exposure to users in indoor facilities. And that concluded my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bjørn. That was very interesting. I think I might just ask you a quick low-scale questions. How are the fields you've been testing in Norway? Have they been a success in general?
They have been a success in the sense that the bulk part of the users are happy. On the other side, this is a pilot project, and we are piloting, which means we are also reconstructing pitches together with the suppliers, because the supplier and we want to learn new things. So I would say that we are in a very good channel of trend in a way that we have suppliers on board which are willing to invest and willing to take risk, but they also willing to take the responsibility when they face that this could be done in another way or this has to be changed. So far, the pitches are there. There is no discussion about taking them away and replacing with something else, and there is no discussion about going back to, I would say, older style designs or systems.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Bjørn. And now I think our next presenter, Holger, is with us. Holger is the head of sports in the Gladsaxe Municipality, close to Copenhagen in Denmark. And they have also made some test fields, and he will take us through the process and the many the new things they learned from both the process and the fields. So Holger, if you're ready, you can just share your screen. You have to unmute.
Yeah, I have unmuted. It works? Okay, fine. Yes, I just need to share the screen. There we go. So, what's this? iPad Air. Everybody, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, I think it's oh, yep.
Progress?
Now it's there.
Good, fine.
So maybe just click on the presentation button in the PowerPoint so it fills the whole screen.
I will do that.
Great.
There we go. It works?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Yeah, that's right. I am the manager of the facilities of Gladsaxe, the community of just north of Copenhagen, and we have the project to do within the next year to change 3.5 football field into with a new plastic turf, artificial grass. So far we have been using traditional 3G grass with the rubber infill, and one area is 10 years old, 11 years old, and the other area is 13 or 14 years old. So they are tired and they have to be changed. They should have been changed already. Since we started the project, the community of Gladsaxe have made a politic about sustainability, saying that we will not in the future accept rubber as infill in artificial grass, as the new EU regulative are going to tell us. So we, from when we started the project until now, we have changed our mind, because the budget we made at first was based on the same solution with rubber infill grass with the 3D solution. But we have to look the 4G way, or we have to look other infill materials. We are of course looking on our economy, and we want to go with a solution that in a total economical aspect are fair in price, and so far our calculations have told us that the infill with the cork, or the infill with other natural materials will be more expensive on the long term than a 4G solution. We were struggling with or not struggling, but there was a kind of opinion saying that all 4G solutions, that's not the best. So we had to to deal with that opinion and trying to involve those having that opinion. And we, because of that, involved our end users of these pitches in selecting what we're going to do. And that's the process I'm going to tell you about, because it might be the way to lay down the story about that 4G grass doesn't work. We have been lucky that at the same time as we have been moving from a rubber infill solution to a 4G solution, the market have developed and new products have come on the market as well. So we did a lot of research of what is coming up as new and successful products in this. We had a lot of research done looking for different products, all 4G, some without infill, some with sand as infill. And among those products we were looking at, we chose 7 different products, which we ordered in small, we call them stamp testing fields. It's a 4x4 meter area. You can't play football on it, but you can walk on it, you can step on it, you can jump, you can do everything. And they were placed on our arena in Gladsaxe, where we had the users come in and testing it. Together with the Danish Football Federation, we made a small questionnaire to ask the users of what they were thinking of friction and how jumping, the grip, was it too soft, was it too hard? We put on the same shock pads underneath all the different types, so they were comparable in that way. We had approximately 50 football players, both women and men, testing the fields and giving their opinion of how they found the conditions and the impression they had of the products. And among the 7, we now have chosen 4 products which are going to be tested in a more realistic way, because we have 4, we have several, but 4 of our we call it, it's not Pana fields, it's the bigger, it's like 12 times 17 meters big, 150, 170 square meter big football pitches, I would say, on our institutions and schools, and they are ready to be changed into a new grass. The grass in these fields are typically a 2G solution with a short straw and sand infill, and they are tired, as we say. Each one of these products we have chosen now are going to be put on each pitch, and they will be done. This work will be done here in July this year. And in August and September, we will ask the football players, even more of them, to go out and test these fields to have a more realistic picture of how they are to play football on. How do they react when you do dribbling and tackling, jumping and passes of the ball and so on. And we will build out our questionnaire with more questions to be more detailed in how they feel of this turf they are playing at. And from this testing in August and September, we will evaluate what the players will find the best product. They don't know the name of the product. Only us behind the shield will have this information. So we hope they will. Hopefully, they will show us one which is the best. But I might think that it will be different opinions showing up. If you are adult, if you are a man or a woman, or if you are an elite player, or if you are a more ordinary football player. But we know, as Bjørn have shown in several researches, that the main users of our artificial grass fields, that's children, youngsters. So we will look in that way doing these pictures. Yeah, I think that's the setup of our project. Finally, next year too, I have our time schedule here. Evaluating in October this year, we will have the description of the requirement specification for the suppliers, which we can put out in November, maybe December this year, and then in the summer 21 we will have this construction of the renewal of the 3.5 football field done next year. So that's the schedule. But I think what we are doing different is that we are trying to make a very active involvement of the end users of these football fields, because that will lay down the story about that the 4G grass is a bad solution. We have, in November last year, we had a smaller delegation testing a 4G grass in Sweden, in Kortbek, and they were pretty satisfied about what they found there. But we would have a wider possibility of make a decision of what type of solution we will find, because the small pieces of grass we have had shows that there's quite a big difference on I wouldn't say the quality, but the way they make the 4G grass turf. So that's why we are doing this work. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Holger. Maybe you can just give us a little bit of insight into the minds of the users. What do people mostly say? Just in short, like is there like an overall opinion already now?
Yeah, I will scroll back to this picture. Here is only 4 of the stamp test fields shown. They were pretty. The users were gave more or less the same answer. So they had a number 1, mostly all of them, which I found the best. And there were one of them which were disqualified because they didn't like. And then there were 5 in between. Which
do you know that, why that was? If they all disqualify one, it must be something.
Yeah, I think the opinion was that it was that they didn't feel comfortable with the way the grass were reacting on when you were the grip and friction didn't feel nice. If it was too much or too less, I don't know. Actually, the color of the grass is actually pretty important as well. That it looks like real grass. More or less, our rubber infield fields now are more or less black. because the grass is laying down, and the rubber is the most visionary, what gives you the visual impression of what you see. But these they are green, and but in a different color set, I would say. But it was the one that which were disqualified was pretty. They found grip and friction was right, and one of them we had to disqualify as well because the price was much higher. It was 1/3 higher than the rest of the. So, but it wasn't the one they preferred actually. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for giving us these insights. I suppose it's always difficult to make processes like this because it's up to every user is comparing to what he or she is used to playing on, I suppose. So that might create some difficulties in choosing the future pitch.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why we made this questionnaire. I think this questionnaire is pretty important because otherwise, if you don't push the users to think about, oh, what do I think about this, and what do I think about that, then if 3 soccer players, they go in this field and they pretty fast make a collective opinion of what is good and what is bad. We had to force them in to think, okay, what is the grip like? Is it a problem, or is it too soft, or is it too hard? Is it too tight on my football boots? So we had to force them to think of that in the test. Otherwise, they just make crosses on the schedule, on the questionnaire. So I think we have to. It's a pretty important work doing this. Is that your evaluation, your imperial material to do the evaluations is pretty important.
All right. We have a question from Florian from Austria, who asks if they used the same shoes or different shoes.
No, but they had to, they of course use their own football boots, but they had to write if they were using football boots or ordinary sneakers or something like that. The 2 person on the picture represent this problem, or we would say the reason why that we would like them to test it with sneakers as well is that especially one of the areas we are going to exchange the turf is the function is as well for during the day as a schoolyard area. That means we have 500 kids running around on the grass with sneakers or similar every day, and they have to feel comfortable using the grass as well. And what we have experienced with the rubber infill 3D grass is that sneakers and this type of grass is a bad kind of combination, because they destroy the turf. The plastic breaks.
All right. As you all might have noticed, we've gone into the discussion part of the webinar now, and Florian also asked a few other questions for Bjørn, but Bjørn also has a comment on the shoes. Maybe Holger, you can close your sharing screen.
Sure.
And then Bjørn, you're welcome to comment on the shoes.
Yeah, first of all, I would say Holger's presentation and his approach with starting with a user-oriented design is extremely good, and we did it partly More and more over the last pilots, and even last weekend, a group of players were moving from to one of the pilot pitch to test it over a couple of days before they went home and make their own decisions. When we did this first test, we also included the variety of shoes, because we had an assumption that the shoe product could be giving an impact on the result for the users. So we tested with 6 different shoes, 2 brands. And the interesting story was that this was men and women, different age, but grown-ups, junior, senior level. The findings was that in particular one model of shoes was considered non-applicable at all. And that's a pity when you know that these shoes can be bought in the shops. So the knowledge of the shoe and the impact of the style of the shoe against the choice of materials in the turf system is extremely important. But it's a painful approach, because then you have to talk to the shoe suppliers, and you have to maybe advise the club to change the brand or change the model, because what they are using now is not the best one.
Great, thank you, Bjørn. There was a few other questions from Florian Schewert. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that correctly, Florian, from Austria, who asked, how do you in Norway secure that materials of old pitches will be recycled? Is there some legislation supporting it?
It's no legislation.
Or is it up to the individual club, I suppose, is the following question.
Of course, we have a national law on pollution in Norway, but going down to artificial turf and these products and this market, there is no guidelines to follow. So this is up to the owner if he wants to make sure that the disposed materials from his old pitch is brought to a proper location or not, and we have seen both. There are also, I would say, on a general level, good legislation on pollution in Norway, but going to artificial turf design and construction, that guideline becomes quite weak, and we see that main problems of pollution from artificial turf systems the last 15 years is caused by a weak design. For instance, a strange situation in Norway, you don't have to apply for a building permit if you want to build your artificial turf pitch. You can just do it. And when you don't have to apply, you don't have to declare anything either. So we are a bit odd in that case.
All right. The first question actually from Florian was, how are the environmental conditions of the pilot fields and the reference fields? Are they comparable? We see different performance of artificial turf systems under different environmental circumstances. So the question is, how are the environmental conditions of the pilot fields and the reference fields?
Yeah, I can say that in one case, the pilot and the reference field is lying side by side. So it's 10 meters in between, and that means the climatic conditions, the user groups are equal. And that's why we want to have it that way, so we can compare pitch by pitch and trying to avoid these variations caused by climatic conditions, winter, no winter, and so on. But of course, the question is reasonable, because in our country we have in the south less winter and less cold weather. In mid-Norway, where I live, we have a lot of winter and cold weather. And if you should suppose that artificial turf should be in use year-round, it gives an impact on how to design and how to operate.
All right. Well, actually, since there is no more questions in the chat, I will allow myself to ask one of the stupid questions that are often very important. People discuss this, the discussion about non-infill and the 3G rubber infill fields in a discussion about sustainability and environment. But is it even possible to say how much more, in some way, that the non-infill are more sustainable? Of course, they don't have rubber infill that spreads to the environment, but they are also made of plastic, and and other materials, and sometimes the shock pads are made of old tires as well. Is it possible to say anything overall, Bjørn, about that?
From my point of view, we are in an early stage in that respect, and I cannot say too much, but our approach has been that there has to be a relation between the quantities and the environmental impact and the carbon dioxide footprint. So can you reduce the total quantities? Maybe you are on the right track. And the next is it possible to reuse some of the materials? And as my trend analysis showed, we are in Norway talking about the total quantity of waste in the range of 40,000 a year. If we can reuse the sand, we are reducing this quantity with 50 to 60% right away. And I think we have to look into directions like that. But we also know that to achieve that goal, we have to develop technology for collecting and separating the fractions on the site to avoid transport. And we have to do it to a level of quality which is acceptable to be reused. And those numbers are not available at the shelf today. We have to dig into what others are doing and see if we can learn something.
Thank you, Bjørn. Now I hope that some other people have questions for either Bjørn or Holger as well. But until you write your questions, I can keep going a little bit. I'm by no means an expert, but the way I see it is also that, of course, there is entire societies and systems built around the rubber infield turf systems, and which also is what creates resistance, because that's what people are used to. And also there are recycle systems, and as you mentioned, that's not the option in the same way for non-infield turf systems right now. But is that one of the main reasons, or is it also the technological development in general? Either Holger, yeah, it could be both. But well, you can say something, Holger.
Yeah, I think the football players, they like what they are used to. So I think it's a question of course you can, if you by research prove that artificial grass are the reason why more injuries of different types or whatever, I don't know. There have been done research in that way, and it's nothing to me proving that artificial grass in itself causes more injuries. It's maybe more reason why the football players never do get any breaks anymore. They're practicing the whole year round. Even a natural grass changes very much from a rainy day into a hot summer day where we have had 3 weeks of no rain. There's a total different pitch to play at. So the standard on artificial grass is much more equal than natural grass, in my point of view, if you look at both with rubber infill and the 4G solutions. And I'm sure that the 4G solution we will have made next year, when they're used to use it, they wouldn't think of as different. They might, when they're going to play on a rubber infill pitch, say that, oh, this is irritating having this rubber infill in my boots when I'm ready or finished to play, and so on. So it's I think it's a question about what you're used to.
And is that, in your opinion, the main challenge? Is that changing the opinion of the players and the industry?
Yeah, of course. And then because 4G pitches grass is a newer product. It's not brand new, but it's a new product, and we of course wouldn't accept that it for somehow will cause us more injuries. Looking at the structure of the grass, I could have it might, if it's possible, that the grip of the turf is different, and it make you stick into the when you have if you're wearing traditional football boots, it might stick a bit hard into the grass. I don't know. I haven't tested myself, but that's just an impression I have. We're looking at the products. But that's why we're making the testing fields, because we want the guys and the women to do it in a one-to-one dimension of the testing, and playing 3 against 3 on a small pitch makes a lot of turns and jumps and dribbling and so on, which should give them the right impression of what is good for them to have.
All right, thank you, Holger. I think we are close to the end of the webinar, but and this is a discussion that can go on for a very long time. It's a very complex thing, and also, as you mentioned, it's players have to get used to a new sort of field in the same way they got used to the 3G rubber infill systems in the first many years ago now. But Bjørn, do you have any last comments? And anyone is very welcome to still maybe write one last question. But Bjørn.
I think what Holger mentioned is a good wrap up, because we should be clear that artificial turf is a substitute for the natural grass, which is the preferred solution for the players. And if you look at other sports like tennis, they have the hard court, they have the grass, and they have the sand or the gravel as a basic solution for the pitches. I think we have to be a little bit more open-minded, but the difference with the artificial turf is that in many cases it's also considered as a playground, and then we are back to the flat sole and the shoe. And I think that it's a bad story for the artificial turf industry, because they have sold something which is used for a different purpose, and it's bad for the users because they go home with the feeling that this artificial turf is not good for me, not taking into account maybe they had the completely wrong shoes on, or they did completely other things than playing top football, which that turf maybe was designed for. So we have to work more with the users, and we have to design according to the users. I think that's the best I can give as a conclusion.
Great, thank you very much. Well, this webinar will be available as a video on different social media platforms and through IAKS and IAKS Nordic. So, and I suppose I didn't ask you beforehand, but Holger and Bjørn, your presentations, are they possible to make public as well in some way or send out?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, yeah, if you would like the presentations, contact me. I can write my mail in the chat. We can also find it on the website of IAKS Nordic. And yep, I would like to thank you, Bjørn, and thank you, Holger, very much for taking your time. And I hope to see many of all of you listeners. I know there's a lot of people who are very interested in this field, and it's a very difficult thing to know everything about, and everyone knows a little bit about what they work with. So I think sharing of knowledge is very important, and I hope that you'll write me, write Bjørn, Holger, and write each other and ask for experiences, and we will all become know more about this in the future. But thank you all very much for listening. Holger, Bjørn, any final comments?
No, don't hesitate to get in touch with me if anybody wants to use the questionnaire or want to know anything about our process. We definitely like to share our knowledge.
I can say the same. Our project is public, and whatever we have been doing which might pay interest is available. Mostly in Norwegian, but more and more in English, so feel free to ask.
Great. Thank you both very much, and thank you all of you who listened and viewed. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.